So, welcome everybody to the conference with le Cercle des Langues. Today we are going to be discussing adverbs of frequency, their position and use in a sentence. So, let's begin. It's important to remember that this is a B1 to B2 level conference for this evening. We will begin, we'll have the first 20 minutes of the conference, just talking about the conference and the content. And for the last 5 minutes, you will have a question and answer. So please feel free to take notes or put your questions into the chat, and we will have a look at them at the end. So let's begin. Tonight's conference has 4 parts. We are going to have an introduction to the adverbs of frequency. We will look at their position in a sentence. We'll then look at using adverbs of frequency in different tenses. And for the last part of our conference, the practical usage and exercises. Let's begin. Welcome everyone. Today we are going to review the topic adverbs of frequency, position and use in the sentence. It is very important for the appropriate use of English, whether in academic, work, or social contexts. Therefore, from now on, we recommend you take note of what is coming up. Introduction to the adverbs of frequency. Adverbs of frequency are words that tell us how often an action happens. They help us describe habits, routines, and repeated actions. For example, I always wake up at 7 a.m. So that shows that it is at 100%. It is something she does all the time. She sometimes drinks coffee. This takes the frequency down to 50% because it is not something she does all the time. Why are they important? They add detail to our speech. They help us express habits and behaviors, and they make sentences more natural in English. So what are the lists? What are the adverbs of frequency? Excuse me. We look at always, so toujours, usually, so d'habitude or habituellement, often, souvent, sometimes, parfois, quelquefois, ou de temps en temps. Ah, mais ça c'est occasionally. Occasionnellement, de temps en temps. Rarely, rarement. Seldom, peu souvent, hardly ever, presque jamais, or never, jamais. So what are those percentages we were speaking about? When we use always, it means that it is 100% of the time. Usually, it takes us to 80 or 90% of the time. Often is between 60 to 70% of the time. Occasionally is 30 to 40% of the time. Rarely is between 10 to 20% of the time. And never is 0% of the time because we never do it. When we are asking questions, we often use how often do you? Because we would like to know about the frequency, la fréquence, the frequency. So, how often do you exercise? How often does she call you? How often do you go to the beach? How often do you meditate? How often do you go to the park? So now the response needs to be so many times per week. For example, I usually exercise 3 times a week. Or, she rarely calls me. I always go to the beach during the summer. I never meditate. I normally go to the park every morning. So you can use an adverb of frequency and you can use an exact amount. 3 times a week, 4 times a month, every morning. Adverbs of frequency in business and academic contexts. So we can talk about periodically. Our company mailing lists are updated periodically. Quarterly. Our financial reports are published quarterly. That means every quarter. Rarely. I am currently at uni, so I see my parents quite rarely. Or regularly. We regularly argue over money. Other advanced adverbs of frequency could be things like nightly. The local bar serves cocktails nightly, which means every night. Or hardly ever. Term hardly ever drinks alcohol. Almost always. She is almost always late for our meetings. Scarcely ever. We scarcely ever go to the theater. Now that we have looked at what the adverbs of frequency are, we are now going to see the position of adverbs of frequency in a sentence. Rule 1. It comes before the main verb. So the most common position for adverbs of frequency is before the main verb. For example, you get your subject, your adverb, your main verb, and the complement. For example, she often studies at night. They sometimes watch movies on weekends. I always drink coffee in the morning. An incorrect and an error that is probably made a lot is she studies often at night. No, we need to remember that the position for most verbs is between the subject and the main verb. Rule 2, it's that it is after the verb to be. So all the verbs get it between the subject and the verb, except to be. To be means that the adverb will come afterwards. So we have the subject, the verb to be, and the adverb with the complement. For example, he is always happy. We are usually tired after work. The train is never late. Incorrect would be, he always is happy. Rule 3. With auxiliary verbs do, have, will, must, or can, the adverb goes after the auxiliary verb, but before the main verb. For example, we have our subject, our auxiliary verb, or the formula, subject, auxiliary verb, adverb, main verb, complement. For example, you must always wear a seat belt. She has never been to Spain. They will often visit us. So an incorrect use of the adverb in this situation is, you must wear always a seat belt. No, when we have our auxiliary verbs, they will go between the auxiliary and the main verb. Rule 4. Different positions. Some adverbs are more flexible and can appear in different places. For example, you've got usually, sometimes, often, occasionally, and normally. These adverbs can appear at the beginning of a sentence for emphasis. For example, sometimes I go for a walk in the evening. I want to emphasize that it is sometimes. They can be used before the main verb in standard placement. I sometimes go for a walk in the evenings. And the third position is at the end of a sentence, which is less common. I go for a walk in the evening sometimes. How do we use these adverbs of frequency in different tenses? The present simple is used for habits and routines. So adverbs of frequency are common in this tense. For example, I always brush my teeth before bed. She never drinks soda. They sometimes take the bus. So here is the present simple. In the past simple, we use it for talking about past habits. Adverbs of frequency still follow the same word order. For example, when I was a child, I always played outside. He never studied for exams, but he still passed. A tip for used to is another way to talk about past habits. I used to always wake up early. Let's look at some practical usage and exercises. So here is an advanced list of 10 adverbs of frequency. Invariably, seldom, intermittently, routinely, sporadically, quarterly, periodically, hardly ever, nightly, and annually. These adverbs range from rare to regular occurrences, making them useful for more advanced descriptions of frequency. Adverbs of frequency tend to be used mainly with the present tense as they describe habits, routines, and events that do not change very often. Let's take a look at this daily routine in which several adverbs are found. Sophia's daily routine. Sophia usually wakes up at 7 a.m., brushes her teeth, and has breakfast. She often takes the bus to work and arrives at 8:30 a.m. Her day starts with checking emails, which she does every morning. She almost always has a meeting at 10 a.m. At lunchtime, she sometimes goes to a nearby cafe with colleagues. In the afternoon, she occasionally takes a walk to clear her mind. She usually finishes work at 5:30 p.m., but sometimes stays later. At home, Sophia relaxes by watching TV or reading. So, we are going to do the next exercise together. We are going to start with the first one. So, please choose an adverb of frequency and fill the empty blanks. Write your answers in the chat. So, we are going to start with number 1. She drinks coffee in the morning. Beautiful. So, we've got always, we have often. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing, everyone. Let's look at the second. They work late on Fridays. Which one would you choose? Natalie says rarely. Ramona says hardly ever. Raymond says often. We've got a few offens, and we have never. Marie often, never. Beautiful. Thank you so much. He goes for a run after work. Raymond says he never goes for a run after work. He sometimes goes for a run after work. Sometimes again. Usually. Always. Often. Beautiful. Sometimes. I forget to lock the door before leaving. I never. I sometimes. Ramona says, I seldom forget. That is a good one. We are trying more of the advanced adverbs. I seldom. Beautiful. I never. We go to the beach on weekends. Before that, we said almost always. Beautiful one, B. Rarely. Okay. We go to the beach on weekends. We always. We sometimes. Could we have one that is we periodically go to the beach on weekends, which means that could be interesting. Let's look at the next one. She helps her friends with their homework. Sometimes, rarely, often, always. Beautiful. Often as well. It's good. Hardly ever. Great. And the last one. Ramona says seldom. Beautiful. They eat fast food for dinner. Never, never, never. Rarely. I love this. Sporadically. Beautiful. We are trying all the other adverbs. Occasionally. It's a good one. It's a good one. So, as you can see, there are many adverbs that we can use when we are talking about frequency. So in this case, the answers could vary a lot. However, here are some possible and correct answers. She usually drinks coffee in the morning. They always work late on Fridays. He sometimes goes for a run after work. I never forget to lock the door before leaving. We occasionally go to the beach on weekends. She always helps her friends with their homework. They rarely eat fast food for dinner. In conclusion, adverbs of frequency are essential for expressing how often actions happen, helping us describe routines and habits clearly. By understanding their position in a sentence and using them correctly in different tenses, you'll improve both your speaking and writing skills. Keep practicing, and soon using these adverbs will feel natural and help you communicate more fluently and confidently. So, thank you for your time, everyone, and thank you for watching and participating in this conference with me. Do you have any questions or comments that you would like to make on this evening's conference? No, it was all clear for everyone? Wonderful. And now you've got the PDF, and I will send it. I think, Mireille, you have sent your email. I will send you the PDF now. So have a look at the adverbs that we use on a daily basis. And we've got some new additions that can help you communicate how frequently you do certain things. So thank you for joining us this evening, and I will see you next week for a new conference. Thank you, everyone, and have a great weekend. Alors, 2 secondes.